Hi, everybody. Dan D. Federicis of Saratoga Report, and I am here with Senator Patricia Fahy, someone I knew when she was running for assembly back in 2012. Senator, was that correct?
Yes, that was a long time, it
Uh,
seems.
Hey, thanks for joining Saratoga Report. I know this is not your district. You represent the 46th district, right? Which is most of Albany County, all of Montgomery, and part of Schenectady counties. Is that correct?
Yes, most of Schenectady County as well. So the three counties, yes, good
Excellent.
parts of all of them.
Well, thank you. I know you've got a busy schedule. Thank you for taking some time out today, and welcome to Saratoga Report. I know budget time and everything's busy, and I want to jump right in here and tell me. Don't be afraid to tell me if I tee this up incorrectly. But Governor Hochul has proposed what is referred to, and this is where I'll really goof it up, a pied-à-terre tax.
Yes,
French term for basically a luxury tax on second homes in the general sense. Is that correct? And
yes. And right now it's confined to New York City, and she has an agreement with Mayor Mondami for the New York City pied-à-terre. And I think you probably say it better than I do.
I
Essentially,
don't
it's a
know.
second. It's
I
a
think
it's
you did it well. And so you said, well, wait a minute. Why are we stopping at the upstate border? And take it from there, Senator. What did you propose? Because I know some of it, but I don't know the intricacies of what you proposed. But you specifically said that it could help communities like Saratoga Springs, which is where my radar went. Boo! I have to talk to the senator. So please
Yes,
take it up from there.
I've used Saratoga as an example quite a bit because I'm very familiar with the pied-à-terre because it has been attempted before in previous years. I think the last time was in 2019 for New York City. It would be mandatory for New York City, and again, it would only be second homes over $5 million. So this is high-end luxury homes. So, because of my familiarity, plus I had worked for 7 years on the short term rental legislation to get a registry. And during that 7 years of work, I learned that there's about 12,000 Airbnbs in the Saratoga area. I knew that since COVID, the second homes, or in many cases, just investor properties, had really gone on steroids. And you're seeing, especially among young people, that they can no longer afford to live in the communities they grew up in, such as Saratoga, such as Lake George, such as Lake Placid, you name it. We have a lot of lakefront communities where people are being priced out, even if they've been, generationally, their families have been in Saratoga. It is because of again, these investor properties, often multi-millions of dollars. And I've heard one example of one of the owners, I guess, of the New York Jets who spends 1 week a year in Saratoga, but owns a multi-million-dollar mansion. So all I've said is this is an option. It's mandatory for New York City, but I'd like to give the option to upstate communities to opt into this tax for these second homes or really investor properties over $5 million, where they could apply the same type of tax. The details on the tax we don't know for this year, but they were at 0.5% in 2019, which is the equivalent of, you have a $5 million mansion. That's the equivalent of about $25,000 per year that you would pay in an additional tax. Again, at the local community's option to opt into this anywhere outside of New York City. The
Okay.
other addition here is because there's many towns and villages in need surrounding the village of Saratoga, I would like to see half of that go into the AIM fund, which is the aid to municipalities. It is something every village, town, and city rely on. It is critical, flexible operating dollars that the state has given villages, towns, and cities. I'd like to see half of that. So let's say Saratoga opts in. Let's say there's 24 second homes or investor properties in Saratoga, and I think that's probably a extremely conservative number. Just ballparking. So you got 24 homes. at 5 million that are, again, second homes or unused and barely used investor properties. That would be and if it's just 0.5% of their value, that would be the equivalent of 25,000 times the 2 dozen. That gives you $600,000. And again, that's an extremely conservative number, because the idea is if it's a $20 million home, it would be slightly higher.
Sure.
At that price, if Saratoga were to get the $600,000 a year, the village would keep, or the municipality would keep 300,000. 300,000 at their option would go into the AIM fund to help other municipalities and villages. $300,000 in a tiny village like Lake Placid or the village of Lake George, that can go into workforce housing. Remember, all these workers now have to drive in because they can't afford to live there, which is causing huge backlash among young people and young families. And it could also help with hiring additional staff to make sure your roads and bridges and your streets are cleaned, and the quality of life type issues that people look for. So it's not a huge fund. It is optional, but we think if New York City is going to do this, we need to have something outside of New York City. Think of the Hamptons. They call it the trade brigade that goes in there every morning because none of the workers can afford to live in the villages they may have grown up in. In the Hamptons, that could be dozens upon dozens of homes that are second homes or investor properties. And there you could be talking millions of dollars that could be raised with a slight increase of 0.5% or more on those homes to benefit the immediate village, but we'd like to see it benefit the broader community.
And can I ask you, so you're keeping the $5 million threshold that would apply to New York City? It would not be adjusted?
Quite frankly, Dan, I'd like to see it a little lower because, but for now, I'm just trying to get the proverbial camel's nose under the tent. I'm just trying to keep this proposal alive. But I think it would make a lot of sense to do it at 2.5 million and do it on these investor properties that, again, are mostly unused. The nature of Saratoga, it is the community of Saratoga has fundamentally changed, and I've watched it in real time, especially since COVID, when these second homes, and really they're investor properties, second homes are being generous. They've gone on steroids. They've knocked the young people, the families that have been there generationally, they've knocked them out of the ability to stay in their own community.
Okay, I have a two-part question here related. Is this something you floated as a trial balloon only, or are you drafting legislation? And what kind of feedback do you have from your assembly speaker, the Senate Majority Leader, and the governor? We all know you're required to have some support there before it's going to get legs. In the end, you need it at the end, right?
Right. Great question. We are drafting legislation. Initially, I was just putting it out as a statement and a proposal because we thought the budget should have been done. As of tomorrow, it's a month overdue. So initially, we were just trying to get it in there in the last couple of weeks, and as we were finessing this. I will say the whole issue has gone absolutely viral. I didn't realize how big a populist issue this is, and we're seeing this across the country with a lot of extraordinarily disillusioned young people and young families, because we have a housing crisis across the country, but we particularly have it in these communities where the nature of the community has changed. Lake Placid, it was known for the Olympics, but it was also known as a year-round community for many who had grown up there and been there many generations. Now it is known as a high wealth, high-end, small village where again, the workers can no longer afford to live there. So just the other day at an event, one of my staff was stopped by this town supervisor from the town of Keene, which is very close to Lake Placid, saying, we're all in. We're losing our population. We're losing our schools are losing families, because these are not the families with kids in schools. And this has just gone viral.
In 1992, I was a sergeant in the state police assigned to the Adirondacks. I rented a chalet in Keene off season. Senator, I think I had it for $250 a month. I couldn't get that place that much for a night now.
You cannot get it for one night. You know what? Oh my gosh, I'm going to interview you, Dan, because that's exactly what has happened. That is a perfect example. Many of these were sleepy year-round communities, or they were second homes. I'm not trying to, these were camps. They often referred to as camps up there, where generations of families had small cottages. I am not talking about the cottages. I am talking about the McMansions that have gone in and have really changed the nature of the town of Keene, the village of Lake Placid. And again, it's at their option. This would be a local opt-in. I just add that you've got to share it with the broader community through AIM dollars.
Okay, so I think I understand this correctly. It would only be for whatever the threshold is, 5 million, 2.5 million. Your cottage on the lake that you only use part of the year is not, unless it happens to be worth 2.5 million, then God bless you. It's not going to be an issue for those people. The municipality gets to take 50% of that. The other 50% goes for the greater good of all the other municipalities. Would that be a fair way to encapsulate what you got?
That's a fair way. And right now, with the bill we're drafting, is at 5 million. I am just trying to keep this proposal alive, because I have seen twice before in the legislature. I think last time was in 2019. This failed. We are obviously going up. It's another David versus Goliath issue. I am not trying to offend the billionaires and the multi-millionaires, but as you know, there's been a lot of taxes proposed. To me, this is the least controversial. It's the least offensive. I am saying, have your property. Just do a little more for the community and for all of our communities outside of New York City. And so this is not income tax. It is an additional fee on these properties that really have gone unused. We've seen what's happened with Airbnb. It took me 7 years to move that bill because of, with Saratoga, the last number I heard, and it's about 2 years ago, could be more now, there were 12,000 Airbnbs in Saratoga alone. It has changed the nature of Saratoga. I just had another member from the Hudson Valley tell me, right in his development, this is a different town, right in his development, there are 8 properties that are Airbnb. It's become investor properties. You don't know who's staying at your house next door to you from night to night. You don't know what party, you don't know who's pulling up. It has really changed the face of our communities. All I'm trying to do is say, do a little more. Do a little more. What's good for New York City should be good for outside New York City. We don't have a lot of $5 million homes. I would like it a little lower. I'm just trying to keep this moving. But the governor at this point has said we're just focused on New York City. I think we're missing the mark. Just today, we had to bail out a school district in a Republican Senate district on Long Island, $8 million short. So while we think of Long Island as having tremendous wealth with the Hamptons and more, lots and lots of waterfront communities there, right? And yet a school district was unable to meet payroll for next week, unable to meet payroll. So we know, well, Saratoga may have a lot of wealth in certain areas. I just had the little village of Scotia, look at they were front page news in the Daily Gazette because they were looking at an 11% property tax increase because of the fact that we are seeing this, this growth, yet not seeing the ability to, for young people to buy there. They brought it down to 6%, but with a lot of trade-offs. So every community I represent, not just Albany, but all of my towns and villages are hurting in one degree or another, to one degree or another.
Okay, good. My final question is, either your colleagues in the legislature or local officials, what kind, and if you could answer it on both counts, what kind of feedback have you gotten on this?
We've gotten, I think, great feedback. A little bit of fear we've already started to hear from the lobbyists. There's a real fear because, as I said, Terre failed twice for New York City. So there's a lot of very wealthy interests involved here. So I know behind the scenes, there's a lot of people working to kill this. But the members I've spoken to have tremendous interest. The main criticism I've gotten is if the village of Lake George is going to do this, they'd want to keep it all. And nothing against the Lake George village or some of these high wealth areas, but it's many of the towns, surrounding towns and communities. They may not have that immediate lakefront property, but I think it has to be shared to some degree. So that's why it's opt-in. It's opt-in. If they don't think it works, if Saratoga doesn't think it works, they don't have to do it. But we think it would probably be hundreds of thousands, if not maybe a couple of $1 million for Saratoga. And when you see that so many of these towns and villages cannot get EMS workers, they cannot get volunteer firefighters, they're struggling to keep their schools open. There's so much more to this. So think about if they had a good few $100,000 to infuse and help their EMS, help their volunteer firefighters and more. I think we're on to something, which is why this has gone viral. And I'm really trying to talk people through this so that they understand it more.
Senator, I know you're extremely busy, especially with the budget being laid and so forth. But thank you for taking time with us today. You've always been. We've always had a good relationship. When I used to lobby down in Albany, and I'm glad that continues now that I'm in a new career realm. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I wish you luck on getting this proposal forward.
Thank you so much for reaching out. I think Saratoga is a real example. It's such a wonderful community. And I see this as trying to be helpful, not harmful. I really, so far, I've heard from just a couple of people who are like, oh God, Pat, do you have to do this? But for the most part, when I start getting stopped in the street, I know I'm onto something. And I'm getting young people understand this. They want to, it's the live, work, play, right? They want to, there's so, parents want their children to be able to grow up in the communities they did. So I appreciate the attention on this and the interest.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Dan. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.